chaos.
It's exactly that. It's chaotic and it's energetic and it's hype.
Right.
And I remember seeing this in the theater, and when the drums started to hit, don, 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 and you're getting hype, and then you see when I saw the guitarist,
Yeah,
and he hits it, and you see the flames come out, I was like, this is a rock show.
Yeah.
Like, this is absolutely insane. And again, they never really relay any context to us as a viewer. Is it meant to be intimidating? Is it meant to be heard from afar, to be like, uh-oh, like stuff's going down? It's not insinuated, but like you said, I'm sure there's a lot of historical accuracy, especially with the drums.
right.
But Miller does it in a way that just adds so much adrenaline to the scene.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak.
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
And we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
Folks, if you've been following the channel and listening to us, we've been on a little bit of a break.
Oh, yeah.
You know, life gets busy, so
Yes.
we're not able to put episodes out as often, but we put them out when we can.
Yeah.
And we looked at the calendar, and there's a movie coming out that we will get to.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a movie we could do a breakdown for that would coincide with the release of that movie. So that's what we're going to do.
Yes.
This movie that we're going to do today is directed by George Miller, and it was released May 15th of 2015. Today, the Panel Bros are going to do a breakdown for Mad Max Fury Road.
So good. I was so excited when you hit me up and say, hey man, Furiosa's coming out really soon.
Right.
How do you feel about touching on Mad Max Fury Road? I was like, without hesitation, absolutely. Like, please give me, you don't need to give me a reason to watch this movie. I've seen it plenty of times, but the idea that now we're going to get to watch it and dissect it a little bit and talk about it. Oh, absolutely thrilled to talk about this one. This one's one of the best, man. I can't front.
Yeah. So, as of this recording, it is late May 2024, and Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is coming out, and we're going to touch on that. It's 9 years after Mad Max Fury Road came out, but you know, people are excited for this, and it's just a perfect opportunity. We got to touch on Fury Road. To let people know our thoughts, you know, as far as that goes. So
yeah,
let's get started here.
Yes.
So we open up here with Mad Max, played by Tom Hardy, and he's narrating here. He says, "My name is Max." That's his opening line, and my world is fire and blood. And we get a brief recap of the Mad Max world, because this is technically the fourth movie. We have Mad Max, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, and then Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. So this is the fourth Mad Max movie. So it's like, it's been a while since we've been here. Let's get a little reintroduction. And Miller just reminds us of the apocalypse and now why the Earth is a desert wasteland. So
yeah, he does it so well visually that there's not a lot of dialogue required. This movie does this very well, where it's very strong visually in telling its story. So you're getting a little bit of narration, but you're getting a lot of imagery, and you get to know who Mad Max is and essentially what he's lost. And the movie will continue to explore that. But I love how Miller was like, hey, quick reminder. And I think that it serves in a way that, let's say you didn't see the previous films, you wouldn't be lost. Miller does a great way of incorporating through imagery, like, hey, here's a little bit about Max. Here's kind of what happened, and here's where we are. All right, let's go.
So we have the opening scene there. Like I said, we have a brief vocal recap of the series, how the apocalypse happened. We get flashes of the news clips. We see how bad it is out here in the wasteland, because the lizard we see crawling around, Max eats it alive. Because
anything that you can consume, man, just eat it. That's pretty much it.
Exactly. That's where we're at. He gets into the car, and we begin, and it's a chase scene just from the start. The car flips. He gets caught. He's tied down. They cut his hair because he has this long hair and this big beard. You know, he's he's been through some things, you know. And they shave his head, and then you see them tattooing all this information on him.
Yeah.
And we need to, they don't tell us what it is, but you see like his blood type, you see all this information, and he escapes temporarily, and then we first hear the theme.
Oh God.
that will come back throughout the movie, and we see him running around, and it almost looks like the video is sped up.
Yeah, George is so creative, again, visually, and we're going to talk about that quite a bit, because again, it's visually stunning. Like the dialogue in this movie, especially with certain characters, is at a bare minimum, but it doesn't hurt the film whatsoever. And the way he captures the imagery in this scene during the chase sequence, there are scenes, like you said, that almost look sped up, so it feels very chaotic. It feels as if you were in a situation when your adrenaline's pumping. It can feel very chaotic. Everything feels like it's happening so fast. And that's kind of how he portrayed this scene. So you have Max, who's running away from these scary bald men at this moment, just chasing him throughout. We don't know anything about these people yet. We just see scary bald men, and you're like, I don't know who these people are. What's going on with the war boys? And it's done in a way, again, that is very electric, and it's exciting, and it's just like very quick, very quick, very quick. And we're getting cuts with with the child character. I don't want to spoil it yet. We'll talk about it as we get, as we keep going forward. And he's getting imagery of like, you let us die, and you're kind of getting all this stress and everything. And again, it's very, very, very chaotic. But the adrenaline's pumping. It was done so awesome.
Yeah, and the last thing we see before the title card is Max actually jumping out of the mountain, and he lands on the device there, but they catch him, and they bring him back in. So we got our title card here. His full name is Max Rokotansky. And he does get captured and taken by the warlord Imortan Joe.
Yes.
At the Citadel there. Max is imprisoned, and he's being used as a blood bag.
Yeah.
For Nux, played by Nicholas Hoult.
Yes.
And they call them war boys. They are ill. Meanwhile, Imperator Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron, one of Joe's lieutenants, is sent to the armored war rig to trade produce for patrol and ammunition with two of Joe's allies, the Bullet Farmer and the People Eater. So we shift to a brief glimpse of Furiosa, but our bigger introduction here is Imortan Joe.
Yeah.
So he steps out and he puts this device on. I believe it's like a breathing apparatus.
Yeah.
And Lord knows what else to help, keep him going. And he gives this big speech. There's thousands of people. They're cheering. But then we see the point of the speech here. Joe controls the water, making him the most powerful figure, at least in this part of the wasteland. I mean, we can only imagine that as the apocalypse hit, that this is what most of the Earth looks like now, to our understanding. And at the end of the day, water is probably the most valuable resource, because this is what is going to keep us alive if we ever want to try to grow crops again, so on and so forth. And he opens up the device there, and it's almost like a waterfall of water just coming down, and all the people, they're trying to get as much as they can, because it's almost like, well, this is going to get me through I don't know how many days, a week, whatever the case may be. Essentially, he's a god. Yeah, he's a god.
He controls the biggest source amongst the people, and he only does it. You can tell he only does it for a brief moment. It's all about power,
right?
And as he's doing it, they're kind of rejoicing, and they're going underneath, and they're trying to collect it in buckets and in pans and bowls, anything that they can get. And when you see the amount of people there, for a fact that not everyone's getting water. Like there's just so many people,
and they're almost like trampling each other, because this is like survival of the fittest. Right,
they're fighting for it, and he has the gall to tell them, do not obsess over water. do not let this be your obsession. Don't become attached to this. And it's just like he's saying that when he has access to all the water he needs, while these people are essentially dying of starvation, malnutrition, of thirst, and he's just like, oh, don't be consumed by this, don't be obsessed with this, appreciate it. You know what I mean? And he just cuts it off really fast, and it's just like it lets you know what kind of quote unquote dictator this individual is.
Right. So Joe realizes that his five of his wives rather, are fleeing the rig. He leads his army in pursuit of Furiosa because she's the one that has them. And he's calling on the aid of Gastown and the Bullet Farm. So we're 15 minutes into the movie now.
Yeah.
Here we go with another chase. And this whole movie is pretty much chase sequences.
Oh, yeah.
We see this caravan of vehicles. One has percussionists, plural, many percussionists on the back playing drums.
So good.
And the front is loaded with speakers and a soul guitarist with a flamethrower as a guitar strapped to cords. The only thing I wish we would have found out was his name in the movie. We have to look at the credits.
Yeah.
This is the Doof Warrior.
Yes.
And there is no point to this. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's some historical significance to like armies back in the day.
The drums and whatnot and playing. Right. Yes, 100%.
They would have so maybe that's an updated version, but we're not going to tell you why we're doing this. This is just chaos.
It's exactly that. It's chaotic and it's energetic and it's hype. Right. And I remember seeing this in the theater, and when the drums started to hit, and you're getting hype, and then you see when I saw the guitarist.
Yeah.
And he hits it and you see the flames come out. I was like, this is a rock show. Yeah. Like, this is absolutely insane. And again, they never really relay any context to us as a viewer. Is it meant to be intimidating? Is it meant to be heard from afar? To be like, uh-oh, like stuff's going down. It's not insinuated, but like you said, I'm sure there's a lot of historical accuracy, especially with the drums.
Right.
But Miller does it in a way that just adds so much adrenaline to the scene, and it was almost his way of saying, from a behind the scenes perspective, we're constantly hit as a viewer with score and musical soundtracks on film, and he wanted to actually implement music into the actual scene as it was happening, and it was just so electric. And like you said, less than 15 minutes, we're back on another chase sequence, and this entire movie is a giant chase sequence with very little downtime, and I was all in. Charlize Theron's character Furiosa is leading us. They're supposed to be going to Gastown, I believe, and they go off course, and people are starting to notice, what's going on here. And the moment Imortan Joe realizes, wait a minute, goes and looks, the women are missing, and it was like, oh, she is fleeing with let's call them what they are. They're prisoners. You know what I mean?
Right.
We'll explain later what their purpose is, but they're prisoners. And he just like, can't let this happen. And we get a giant chase sequence right off. I love it.
Yeah. So Nux joins the pursuit with Max strapped to the front of his car. And a chasing battle ensues. We get the whole silver aerosol in the mouth. Witness me. It's a drug. We don't know what that is.
It is. Okay, to my understanding is that obviously they want to be greeted at the gates of Valhalla, and the way it's like the way gasoline and vehicles are appreciated in the wasteland because they don't have much of anything else. I kind of took it as like, okay, they present themselves the best as possible if they're going to go to the gates of Valhalla, bright and shiny like chrome. So they brighten their mouth, so they look bright and shiny, but it's so chaotic. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, what are they doing?
So I thought there was a medicinal value. So you're saying it's all cosmetic.
I think I believe it's cosmetic because they only do it right before when they think they're going to die.
Okay, there we go.
Like right before anytime, and as we'll see it, anytime a war boy is like, oh, I'm going to be greeted at the gates of Valhalla, they spray their mouth shiny chrome. And I think, and I'm getting ahead of myself because we'll talk about it again later, but there's someone that says something later that I was like, oh, I think that's why they do it.
Yeah. And I believe this is like a cake decoration type situation. Fans of pastries and such that I think they have that like in an aerosol. So I'm pretty sure that's what they use there. So
oh yeah.
So we see Furiosa. We have this sequence here. Furiosa drives into a sandstorm. She loses all of her pursuers except for Nux. who attempts to sacrifice himself to blow up the rig. Witness me, right?
Yeah, he definitely springs.
Right. Max frees himself and restrains Nux, and Furiosa destroys their car. So during the sequence here, we see explosive spears, we see cars flipping, people flying off. We see people flying off a lot in this movie. As we enter the sandstorm, they do make the mistake of cutting Max free as the counterweight because of the flat tire here. So, we know he's going to get free because of that. The sandstorm is a visual spectacle. It's tornadoes, lightning bolts, dust everywhere. We have cars going up in the tornado. Holt's character Nux, he is ready to die just to catch Furiosa. I live, I die, I live again. We hear it. He floods the cockpit with fuel, and Max busts through the back windshield, preventing him from dropping the flare. And that's when the car gets hit and it flips, and that's how we end the sequence there. Anything to add as far as this whole thing goes?
Listen, again, the movie just continues to find a way to up the previous scene. Right. So the chase sequence was already insane and amazing because of the stunt work that went into it. We're getting practical explosions,
right,
and great stunt work from stuntmen, and you're just kind of blown away by the sheer insanity of it all. And then we see the sandstorm, and it's so massive. You're like, there's absolutely no way. And Max gets free. They have this fight on the car. Nux is ready to die. You know what I mean? He's like, nope, this is it. I'm ready to die. He even tells his blood bag, Max, he goes, hey, blood bag, witness me. You know what I mean? They need someone to witness their sacrifice.
Right.
And he does the spray paint or whatever. And luckily, Furiosa is a beast behind the wheel. And, Nux and Max, they go flying. And that's going to lead into the next sequence. But this whole thing just looked incredible. This movie came out in 2015, and to this day, it looks phenomenal. And that is a testament to George Miller and everybody who worked on it. This is a fantastic scene.
So after the sandstorm, Max finds Furiosa repairing the rig, accompanied by Joe's wives, Toast, Capable, the Dag, Cheeto, and Angharad, the last of whom is heavily pregnant with Joe's child.
Yep.
So we find out that Max and Nux, they live.
Yes.
And actually the last scene you see is them flying off the car as
the
car
dude, you
flipping.
See them like you and you're like that. Oh my god, I can't believe they survived. But yeah, you see them flying.
Right. So apparently they live because they landed in a soft bed of sand or something. I don't know, but
movie logic. I don't know.
Yes, movie logic, right? So Max gets free, but he's still chained to Nux. So he carries the door and Holt's character Nux, because he had the shotgun. He's ready to blow a hole through Nux's arm just to get free. He realizes he can't do that because the gun jams, it malfunctions. So he's carrying the car door and Nux on his back. When he finds Furiosa with the 5 wives. He uses the faulty shotgun to direct them. He sees the water, he guzzles it. That's a really important scene too, because at that moment, all he can think about is water. He's just had blood drain from him. He's had all these fights and sequences. The man is tired, and water's the only thing that's going to help him at this point.
And there's something very small that I always took into account is they're drinking the water, and he's staring at it. And there's a moment where one of them is just holding it and water's just pouring out, and there's no urgency for them to be like, turn it off. And it showed me that, the difference between where Max is and where they were, because they were prisoners, but they had access to water because of who they were, because of Imortan Joe. Again, they are very important to Imortan Joe, and he needs them, not so much as people, but he needs them to be healthy. And we'll get there on why. So they're used to this idea of water, and like just a quick moment of her just letting it pour out for a couple seconds, and he's just like, "Are you kidding me?"
Right, and they're not just drinking it; they're bathing in it.
Yeah, they're bathing it, like they're just washing themselves off, and he's just like, "That's water." You know what I mean? Like that's so important, and it was just a small detail that I liked that I picked up.
Yeah. He's trying to get them to use the bolt cutters to use his chains, because he's got chains on him connecting him to Nux, and then he's got this mask, around his face that we're going to get to in a little bit here. So Max fights and subdues Furiosa. We saw like a metallic device, but then we realized she actually has one arm. So she has a fight with one arm against Max. They go back and forth. Furiosa is trying to go get her gun, but Max is still chained to Nux, making things difficult. So there's this whole fight sequence here.
Yes.
He finally gets the gun with the magazine, because when he gets the gun, she hits a button on it to make the magazine drop.
Yeah, the clip drops. Yep.
There's one in the chamber. She goes to fire it. She misses. So now they're back and forth. And then Nux, he's like, go get it, so he gets the magazine back in, and he fires not one, not two, but 3 warning shots right by her head. Boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
And that ends the fight.
Yes. This was a really good fight, because it showed that they were both they both had something against them. Furiosa was fighting with one arm, and Max was fighting chained to an unconscious Nux. And so like they're both battling themselves in a sense as well as each other. And the fight was so good. And Furiosa with one arm is a beast, bro. She was nasty. She was hitting him with her nub. She was headbutt. Like they're going back and forth, and Max is trying, but then the girls are getting involved and yanking him off. Nux is waking up, and he's like, oh crap, a second ago this was just my blood bag, but I need to work with him to defeat her because Imortan Joe wants her. So like they're working together and whatnot. And she was this close, bro. She pulled that one shot, and Max was able to just kind of move his head last second. She almost had Max dead to rights. And as you mentioned, he takes I think it's 3 or 4 shots around her, could have killed her, and he absolutely doesn't. And he's just like, no, just take this thing off of me. That's all I want.
So he tries to steal the rig. And they do get the bolt cutters. Nux uses them, but he still has the device attached to his face. He's like, all right, forget this. I'm just going to drive away with the rig. He doesn't know the code to bypass the kill switches, though, so begrudgingly joins up with Furiosa and the wives. So it breaks down, as I stated, because Furiosa knows, how to set it up. Only she can drive it. So they all jump back on. And Max, she's the way she enticed him was, do you want to get that thing off your face?
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons. There's a lot of reasons, but that's one of them. So immediately she gives him I think it's like a pick or something to saw at it.
Yeah, I forget the name of it. I know what it is, but it's steel. Like it's metal, it's steel, but it also has like a grinding, like almost like sandpaper.
Like a file?
It's something like a very, very, very big file, and I forget the name of the tool, and that's what he's using essentially to kind of just like grind at it, but I can't tell you what the name is, which is like, hey, here you go.
Yeah. So he's doing this while still holding, one of the guns, and he's giving them directions without speaking here.
Yeah.
Gathering all the guns, because it's a lot of guns, because they're in the wasteland. They need to protect themselves. This is just a great display, I said here, of how Hardy primarily communicated without speaking, much at all. And Miller's been making the rounds as far as how many lines Furiosa has in the new movie compared to how many lines Tom Hardy had in this movie. It's not that much. I think it was like under 60, something like that.
Yes, it was in the 40s.
Yeah.
And again, many people would see that and be like, that's a problem. And it's like, no, George Miller says it. Like, no, he said that like sometimes dialogue, depending on how it is, can weigh some things down. He goes, but visually, if you could tell your story visually, you've got something great. And I agree with him. I think it's awesome.
All right. So Max only had 63 lines in the movie.
63, and she has 40 something, right? I feel like in Furiosa she might have 40 something lines.
Right, not in this movie, but in the new one.
No.
Anya,
yes. I'm thinking ahead. I'm going too far ahead.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that actually. So they're dragging a fuel pod, and Max offers to go because she says it's holding them back. He puts on his jacket, the infamous jacket. And he goes, and then they just show her pulling up the stick shift with a blade in it, and it's almost like she had a chance to use it on him, but she didn't.
Yeah,
at this point, they're showing how the two characters are trying to trust one another because they need each other.
Yeah.
After Max fixes the fuel pod, he continues picking at the mask and finally gets himself free. And I wrote this down here. He had it on for a really long time, and you
Oh
almost
yeah,
breathe that sigh of relief that he did
yeah.
after he gets that device off of his face. So
Yeah, it's even shot in such a way where like you have Max very center screen, and he's chiseling, and you hear it pop, and like you said, there's kind of like this moment of like, like he takes it off and he just walks forward towards the camera, and it's like you take that breath with him.
right, I just looked it up. Furiosa only has 30 lines in the
See,
Furiosa movie, so
yes, I love it. I
yeah,
love it. I
yeah,
love
Miller
it.
cut it down even longer. So,
I love it. Let's keep it going. I love it.
so Nux boards the rig as it leaves and attempts to kill Furiosa. He is overpowered and thrown out, and Joe's army picks him up when they pass by. Furiosa drives through a canyon controlled by a biker gang, having arranged to trade fuel for her safe passage. But the gang turns on her when they spot an army approaching, forcing
Mhm.
her to flee. The bikers detonate the canyon walls to block Joe and then pursue the rig as Max and Furiosa fend them off. Joe drives over the blockade in a monster truck and catches
Wow.
up with the rig, allowing Nux to board and attack Furiosa again. But Nux trips before reaching the cab. So while helping Max, on her on I can't pronounce it. Angharad, yes, falls off the rig and is fatally run over by Joe, unfortunately, who temporarily halts his pursuit. Capable finds Nux hiding in the rig and consoles him as he laments his failure. So Nux is driving and he's just like he's saying to Joe, witness me, I want to do this. I want to do this. So, he gets on top of the rig and he trips. You
This
know,
was look, at this point, Nux is not quote unquote a good guy, right? He's not on our side, right? What was interesting about when Nux was taken over by the women in the truck, they're like yelling at him. And he's like, no, this is the way it is. Like, I live, I die, I live again. And they're like, no, you're brainwashed. And like, there's this great argument between them. And it's our first introduction to like, what Nux's story is going to be. And he's like, no, this is what it has to be. And they're like, no, blah, blah, and they throw him out of the truck. And Imortan Joe comes up and he's like, hey, I can get on the truck and I'll stick her for you. He's got a blade and goes, I'll stick her. And Imortan Joe's like, no. No, because he said he would just injure her. He was like, oh, I'll stick her in the back, I'll injure her, and you can finish her off. And Imortan Joe hands him the gun and goes, no, you do it. And then he sprays him in the mouth and he goes, bright, shiny, and chrome. And he goes, and if you do this, I myself will carry you into the gates of Valhalla. And you see Nux's reaction and you see how important this is to Nux. And again, you're getting a little bit more of Nux's story, and you realize that these people are bred and taught this from the youngest of age. They only have what they call a half-life. They don't have a long expectancy because of the world they live in, and they're all born with whether it's disease or radiation and all types of things. So like they don't really have a long life expectancy. So for him to be told this by like the guy, Imortan Joe, like, if you do this for me, I myself will carry you into the gates of Valhalla. There's no greater honor than that. And he gets thrown on by Nathan Jones, this big dude. Nathan Jones throws him on, and he's about to do it, and his chain gets caught. And when he falls, he drops the gun. And Imortan Joe looks at him and pretty much states his displeasure and says, mediocre. And at that point, Nux is broken, because that's all he wanted to do was to be witnessed by Imortan Joe, and now he let him down. And again, I don't even at this point, I'm not a Nux fan, but I was like, oh man, like that's kind of heavy for Nux. Like that's has been his whole life setting up for this one moment. He finally got it, and just like that, it was gone. And I was like, oh, poor dude.
So let's take this moment now to talk about why these wives are so important to Joe.
Yes.
So, in the beginning of the movie, we get a brief shot of women nursing
Mhm.
babies, and we don't know what it's about. And then later on, we find out they're all Joe's children.
Yeah.
And then we find out later on that these 5 of his wives, they're a part of the whole thing that he has going on, let's say. And
Mhm.
one of the women's pregnant. Unfortunately, she loses her life, and the baby doesn't make it either.
Yeah.
And, then all of a sudden you find out one of the war boys, Nathan Jones, he said, "Oh, that was my brother," So, um, there's this twisted thing going on here where my only guess is that Joe is trying to repopulate the planet by impregnating women, obviously against their will, or they're brainwashed into thinking they are doing this of their own free will. And it's all a part of the whole thing that he has going on here that makes him so powerful. He controls the citadel with the water. There's soil there as opposed to, there's soil, there's green. He's doing his part as far as repopulating the planet. So this is all working together as to how Joe became sought at as this figure here. And obviously these 5 women were just like, no, we're not doing this anymore. This is not for us. We're not doing this anymore. We got to go. So that's why Joe left the Citadel to pursue. It wasn't just the resources that Furiosa had. It was the 5 women were the main thing. So I'll let you touch on that here for a second.
Yeah. And I think there was also some levels to what Imortan Joe wanted from these children too. If you look at Imortan Joe's children, you have the Nathan Jones character. He needs a breathing apparatus. He cannot breathe on his own. He has a breathing apparatus. He's got the machines on the back. And then he has another son, which was a little person that you could tell had breathing issues. And he also had an apparatus. And it seemed that he had a quest to make a perfect human being, because people born in the wasteland are born with, again, either abnormalities or radiation, half-life, and this idea of trying to create the perfect child again. We get glimpses really fast during the nursing scene where you can see some of the children being held. And again, it's insinuated in the film that they are not what Imortan Joe would consider a perfect child, because they make it a point in the movie to say, you had a baby brother and he was perfect in every way. And Nathan goes, I had a baby brother and he was perfect in every way. And it was kind of like this idea of like Imortan Joe just doesn't want to bring more children into the world, but he wants to bring the children into the world that used to exist. If you look at everyone that surrounds Imortan Joe, there's something wrong with everyone. Like even Imortan Joe, like he needs a breathing apparatus. He's got a skin condition. They've got to wear all this armor and bodysuit just for him to function normally. Right. And the idea
and
that you can have a normal child.
Right. And the wives, they look like models.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the mentality that these women, they don't have the same ailments, which is why they became the 5 wives.
They're super important because, as you mentioned, it was probably super difficult to find these women that looked what would be considered as perfect in this world.
In
this world, this is what humanity is what it used to be, and they resemble that. And he's like, okay, these women are really important to me, because again, you do see other women at the spot at their lair. You see other women, but these women specifically to Imortan Joe are so important because they carry maybe I don't know if legacy is the right word, but what humanity used to be, and he's trying to get back to that.
Right.
But one would hope it was really sad.
And one would hope they weren't just judging them on their outer appearance. It was, oh no, they're healthy.
They're
healthy.
Right. They don't require breathing apparatuses. They're not sick. They don't have any radiation. They don't got any of that. Like, these are normal looking women in terms of what he's used to having around him, if that makes any sense, which is why they're so important. Because again, he's got other women there. Why are these women so important? Like, why are these women so important?
And Furiosa touches on it because Max grazed the pregnant one's leg with a bullet. And she says something about he's not going to be happy that you damaged one of his wives.
You damaged it. Exactly.
Almost like
perfect.
Right. Like you had touched on it off the air with me. They're property to him. They're not his wives. They're his property.
Yep.
So, and
they
then
make it. There's that line in that movie. The line in which goes, "We are not things. Like, we are not things.
Yes.
You cannot possess us," and that's very important.
So darkness hits, and we get this gorgeous background of blue to to showcase that they're in the dark. During dark, when it hits dark, Furious and Max, they slow Joe's forces with mines set in swampland. But Joe's ally, the bullet farmer, continues the pursuit. The rig gets stuck in the mud, and Nux emerges from hiding to help free it. joining the crew. Furiosa blinds the approaching bullet farmer.
Oh yeah.
And we have another great scene here. And to
Yes.
do that, she gets the sniper rifle on Max's shoulder, and they're shooting back and forth, and she just says, "Don't breathe."
Don't breathe.
And she hits it, she gets the shot off,
It was great because Max is missing. Like Max, he can't make the shot, and she kind of just stands behind him, and he gives it a look like, all right, you take it. And then she puts it on his shoulder, and she's like, just don't breathe. And she takes a shot, and she gets it. It's a great moment.
So Max confronts him and returns with guns and ammunition. In the morning, Furiosa explains to Max that the green place to which they are escaping is a land she remembers from her childhood. She recognizes a familiar landmark and shouts out her history and clan affiliation to a woman on top. Max says that's bait because he doesn't trust the situation. It's a fully nude woman screaming for help, and Max says, I don't trust this.
Yeah, exactly.
He knew that there was something going on, but thankfully, once the woman heard what Furiosa said, oh, she's one of us. She's a part of our clan. Just a little tidbit here. The woman here is Valkyrie. She's played by Megan Gale, and that's who would have been our Wonder Woman and Justice League Mortal.
I was hoping. I was like, please say it
yeah.
on the panel. I was like, please say it because people need to know that.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that a little bit when we're wrapping up here about Justice League Mortal, and that's a movie Ricardo and I are going to be talking about nonstop, So the woman summons her all-female clan, the Vuvalini, I believe it's pronounced. Okay. And they recognize Furiosa as one of their own who was kidnapped as a child. Furiosa is devastated to learn that the swampland from the previous night, that's the green place now.
Yeah.
It's uninhabitable, and there are only 7 of the Vuvalini left. The group begins to ride across an immense salt flat, hoping to find a new home, but Max leaves. After seeing a vision of a child he failed to save, Max catches up and convinces the others to return the way they came, since there's nothing left in the salt flat, suggesting instead that they return and take over the undefended citadel, which has ample water and crops, and they meet Joe's forces and engage in battles. So you wanted to touch on that vision of the child?
Yeah, and it's this idea that Max essentially lost his child and lost people around him, and using that guilt and saying, I don't want to lose anybody else, and I don't want to be not responsible, but I want to play a bigger hand in actually helping these people. And there's a really good moment between Furiosa and Max where she's explaining to him what their plan is and saying, hey, we're going to take our bikes, we're going to go over here, we're going to take this, we can probably last 160 days. There's a bike here for you. You're more than welcome to come with us. And that's a big moment because, we saw how Furiosa and Max were introduced to one another. And as the movie progresses, they're getting a little bit more and more comfortable with trusting one another. And I thought that was a really, really big move. Again, something as simple, as handing the gun over. She didn't have to say anything. And he was just like, all right, you take the shot. Like, he put that trust in her. And at this moment, I thought it was really cool that she was like, hey, like, there's a bike there for you. We're going to give you some stuff, but you're more than welcome to come with us. And he's like, I'll make my own way. And then he tells her, like, hope, that's not the way to go. Like, you need to always have a way to succeed at something that'll, because if you just hold on to hope, you're going to go insane out here in the wasteland because you're just holding on to hope. You're holding on to hope. He goes, no, you got to actually have something to do. And then he has those flashbacks of losing those very close to him. And he's just like, no. And I love, and it's so, like, for someone who might not have seen it, it probably sounds silly to some to be like, hey, just turn around and go back where you came from, right? But within the context of the film, it absolutely makes sense because Imortan Joe was so bent on getting these women back that, like, all the troops left, they have no defense at the Citadel right now. There's nothing. And the last thing that they expect is for Furiosa, Max, and the girls to come right back through the middle and then, like, close them out. Like, it's such a really, really good idea. And again, they kind of just look at each other and they go, I thought you weren't crazy anymore. It's a fun little joke. And they're like, well, there's plenty of water. There's crops. There's produce. this might be the move, and like, and that's the move. And right now we're just doing a U-turn, and we're going straight on.
I like that we're both touching on this here about the trust between Furiosa and Max, because um, typically in these dystopian films, it's every man for himself.
Yeah.
Because usually, no matter what it is, vampires, zombies, a virus, people are always going to be the biggest threat.
Oh yeah.
So, but Max had an opportunity to kill her, but
Oh
all
yeah.
he did was subdue her. He stole the rig, but she learned something about him. Oh, he wasn't trying to kill us or anything. He was just trying to get to where he needed to go.
Yep.
He stole the rig, obviously, with the water in it, but
Oh yeah.
you got to do what you got to do. But he didn't kill us because that's not who he is. He's only going to kill the bad guys, not me and the wives. And even Nux to a certain extent.
Oh yeah.
So it's almost just like, well, she learns. Well, first of all, he went toe to toe with her, and she's supposed to be like one of the best. So she's just like, oh no, he's good enough to help us accomplish our goals, and we can help him get to where he needs. So they're helping each other out. So I thought that was great.
Yes, I love that mutual respect that starts to build between them.
Right.
And I thought that it plays really well in the character. And like you bring up a very good point. In this type of a world, in this type of a wasteland, that probably doesn't really exist much anymore. You know what I mean? So for those two to have not really significant amount of time with one another, but based through their actions, they're getting an idea of who each other are, and they want to work with one another.
Right. And then it culminates. Well, it culminates at the end of the movie, but you see that in the one scene where she's just like, "Don't move," for the sniper shot. They're in this fight here. Max gets shot with an arrow, and he holds his hand up at the last second and stops the arrow. I think he had the vision there, right?
He has a vision, and it's the little girl, and she throws her hand up to him, and in doing so, he's trying to he's blocking what she's throwing. And it's this weird instance of just like fate saying no, not yet. I like how George Miller plays with it. He uses this vision to kind of like shock him into place, and then it goes right here, and it essentially saves his life.
Yeah. So I mean, the arrow's stuck in his head, but it's a little, it's a small thing because the hand took most of the impact there. So now we have these new guys on poles trying to swoop in and grab the wives. They're swinging back and forth.
Oh,
it's like,
man.
How many things can you throw at us in one movie? We have chainsaws. Max falls during the battle, and Furiosa catches him with her bionic arm. Max is caught by one of the pole guys, swings him back and forth and there's like a slow motion shot with like explosions going on in the background here. Max even makes it to the Doof Warrior with the guitar, and they have like a little scuffle.
Yes.
But when they're done and Max gets away, what does the Doof Warrior do? He picks up his guitar and goes back to playing.
he's got one job.
Right.
And it's to play throughout the entire beef. That's it. He goes right back to it, and it's like, all right, I'm swinging back. He's like tied in with bungees, and he's throwing all the way around, but he comes back. All right, keep on playing.
Unfortunately, 5 of the Vuvalini are killed, and Toast is captured.
Yeah.
As they approach the canyon, Joe gets in front of the rig to slow it, while Max fights Joe's large adult son, Rictus Erectus. That's Nathan Jones. Furiosa, though seriously wounded, boards Joe's truck to save Toast, and the two join forces, enabling Furiosa to kill Joe.
Listen, I want to say this really quick. The moment when Furiosa gets injured, it's important for a couple reasons. The main reason is because it happens because she's literally trying to keep Max from falling off the rig. She's holding him by his legs. He's hanging off for dear life. And she gets stabbed in the back, and she doesn't let him go. And again, I'm like, it's those moments of just like, no, we're in this together. You know what I mean? And she could have very easily dropped him from the pain, but she's able to muster up the strength, and she just lets out this warrior's yell, and she gets stabbed in the side. and she never lets him go. And I'm like, gosh, man, like Furiosa, I've said it before and I'm thinking she's a beast. She's a beast. And again, the relationship at this point is just like, no, we're in this to the end. And I thought it was a really cool moment that like even through all that, she wasn't going to drop him. And I'm like, yo, she's a team player at this point.
So as I stated, she does kill Joe, and it's a pretty awesome death sequence. She takes
Yeah.
like a winch and she hooks it into the breathing apparatus, and it just gets caught in the gears of the car, and it pretty much rips his face off.
Yup.
Um, the surviving brides and Vuvalini cross over to Joe's vehicle, and Nux sacrifices himself by wrecking the rig to block the canyon, killing Rictus. He's thinking he's going to join them now because these are the new people I'm with, and he's just like, they're not going to make it,
Yeah.
unless I stop these guys. And unfortunately, he did what he had to do.
This is that moment where we see it in movies time and time again, and when they pull it off, they do it's awesome. This was the moment he redeems himself, where he's been playing a war boy for Imortan Joe for years. Can't tell you how many people he's probably killed for less. And throughout the movie, we've seen him, because after he loses Imortan Joe, when Imortan Joe, says mediocre and he realizes he let him down, there's nothing left. He feels like he's got nothing left to live for. He goes, I wasted my half-life. I'm nothing. And Max, Furiosa, more so the girls, are very like, no, it's okay. Like, you don't have to, that doesn't have to be you. That doesn't have to be your identity. And they have really soft moments. And he even brings up some point like, oh, me and my mates. And she goes, who are, like, what are you talking about? And he's got like these little swollen nubbins on his shoulder, and he drew like smiley face on them. He goes, yo, these are my mates right here. And they're kind of just like humanizing him. So the whole movie, they're building this relationship, and you really believe like, okay, Nux is going to be with them, and Nux believes he's going to be with them. But unfortunately, the Nathan Jones character is still alive, and Nux realizes, oh man, like they're not gonna make it unless I make a power move right now. And he looks at her, he looks at them. I forget the redhead's name, and I apologize, but he looks at her because they're the ones that kind of had a really strong relationship as the movie progressed. He looks at her and he does the whole witness me. And it's so sad. And he yanks the wheel, it flips, it creates a blockade, and it keeps everybody out. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, man, I actually cared. Like, this was a guy who was, just another villain, if you will, and throughout the movie saw what he dealt with and learned a little bit more about him. And he, at that point, he gave his life to make sure that they made it to their freedom. And I'm like, you can't do a better thing than that. Like, that was an amazing move for Nux.
So Furiosa isn't doing too well. She's lost a lot of blood, and we take it back to the beginning of the movie. Why Max was a valuable blood bag is because of his blood type.
Yes.
He's a universal donor. I'm going to assume he was O negative. That's who the universal donor is. That was tattooed on his back here. So he's just like, no. And then they get the needles, and then he's just like, hold this up here, and the donation saves her life.
There is a moment here that's so beautiful, because at the beginning of the movie, she goes, what's your name? What do I call you? And he goes, doesn't matter. Again, this is at a point where Max is just like, hey, we're just using each other to get where we need to go. We don't need to be personal. We don't need names, whatever. And she goes, all right, I'm going to call you Fool. You know what I mean? And he's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's fun. And like, he's trying to get her to cling to life. And he's giving her the blood, and he's holding her hand. He's like, hey. He's like, wake up. And he goes, my name is Max. And like, just that simple thing of him giving his name is just like, hey, my name is Max. We're on a different level now. Okay. Like, I need you to stay. I'm trying to help you here. And it's a small thing, man. It's a nice callback to the beginning of the movie, and it shows where they currently are in their relationship.
So we're back at the Citadel now, and they killed Joe. That was only part one. Part two is them actually letting them into the Citadel, because Joe's forces are there still, and I'm sure they have a plan in place if Joe ever dies, etc. But them showing up with Joe's body just to show everybody, hey, you're God. We killed him.
Yep.
He's no longer here. So, but we have Furiosa, and she's ready to, to lead. She's ready to change things for the better. And the people up at the top, they see that, But here's the thing: the common people, they cheered when they found out Joe died.
Mm-hmm.
They cheered when he was still alive, but maybe because they had to. But
He's a dictator. They have to, yeah.
but they cheered when he died, found out that he died. As Max's companions are lifted to Joe's cliffside fortress, because one of the sons, the little person, actually, he gave the call to let them up, and they're lifted to the fortress. Max exchanges glances with Furiosa before disappearing into the crowd. And that's our movie. So,
what a movie, man.
Yeah.
There's no way we can talk about this movie that would do the movie justice. Like, it has to be watched. It's so good.
Yeah. So the initial thoughts here I had upon my rewatch was that there's just so many layers here. One of the biggest ones was, we're in the apocalypse now, and people needing to trust each other. And there's a relationship built there between Furiosa and Max where they had to trust each other to help each other. And Nux was given a second chance because he was on the side that of the bad guys, basically. Yeah. And it's like, he was shown that, listen, you have a chance to do some real good. And, he decided to join forces with Furiosa's side. And clearly there's some political overtones here, some social commentary about a dictator and Imortan Joe controlling the water, controlling the people, and it's a lot going on, and it shows that this wasn't just a mindless action movie, as some people called it that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, on a surface level, I've seen people say like, "Oh, it's just a really good action movie," and it is, but there's more to it.
There's a lot of layers going on, and upon my rewatch, I was able to catch that, and I love what you said about the wives too, because that's another layer altogether there. We're not things. So
we are not things is such an important line in that movie.
Absolutely. So how about your initial thoughts upon this past rewatch for you, Ricardo?
Well, I love the rewatch. This is one of those movies that I told you off the air that I can watch this over and over again and never get sick and tired of it. For the visual medium, and just like you said, the layers to it. What I loved about the movie was that it was more than just a movie in a wasteland with gasoline. Like you said, there's a little bit of political stuff. There's social commentary. I'm a big proponent of the idea of Imortan Joe getting what was coming to him, because the idea that he felt he could essentially own women. Like, there's a big social commentary on this man who thinks he has ownership to these women's bodies. And it's why that line is so important to me when he goes into the vault to look for the women and they're not there. And they're like, "We are not things. You do not own us. We are not property," but he treats them as such. This idea that Imortan Joe is chasing them for a higher calling, when in reality it's because he views them as his property. He has goals that are not their goals. And, the harsh reality of it is that these women were not on board with what was happening. And it took for Furiosa, someone who was one of his, top soldiers, to say, "Hey, we need to do something about this." And I love that aspect of the movie. I love the idea that the movie at its core is a Furiosa story. Max just happens to be in it. And I love that. Now, I know that some people might be like, "Oh, but it's Mad Max. It should be about Mad Max." And I'm like, the idea of Mad Max is a drifter through the wasteland. I love the idea that he can pop up in, someone else's story and just, be an allegiant character and help them along the way. And this is one of those movies that it's just as much Furiosa's film as it is Max's. And I love that when I watch it, I feel that, because Furiosa is such an engaging character as well. Where Mad Max lacks in the dialogue and he's using a lot of his visual takes, Furiosa's carrying the story. She's the one that's giving us the context. She's the one that's laying out why she's doing what we're doing. And I mean, you couldn't ask for someone better than Charlize Theron. Like she's incredible in the role. But I love that. I love the idea that it showcases who Max is, and what kind of character Furiosa is. And Max essentially is a good person. and he's going to do what's right. And I like that because again, he could have left at any point. She gave him the free, hey man, you can go. And one thing that I want to talk about, and I told you a little bit about it off the air, was how the movie closes with a quote, and I think it reflects a lot on the story and what I took away from it. And the quote is, "Where must we go? We who wander this wasteland in search of our better selves." And one would think that in the wasteland, when people would always turn on one another, again, you mentioned it earlier, zombie movies, vampire movies, things of that nature, like humanity is always the scariest aspect because we're unpredictable and we'll turn on each other just to protect ourselves. And I like that this movie showcased that even in the worst of places, in the wasteland where resources are at its lowest, we can still find our better selves. Nux is a great character that finds his better self. We learn about Charlize Theron, who's been working for Imortan Joe for so long, who decides, no, enough is enough. I'm getting these women out of here. You have Max, who could have went off on his own and decides, no, I'm going to help these people. I love that aspect about the movie, that in the harshest of environments, these characters are still finding better versions of themselves. So seeing it, recently again, I get reminded of that, and it's just such a cool aspect of the movie. That's more than just cars exploding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and for me, just and nothing beats the first time I saw this in the movie
Oh,
theater. It was great. I want to say you told me about it, and I
I
went.
saw it opening day.
You saw it opening.
So
I didn't see it
yes,
opening day, so
opening
I
day.
might have heard from you if I'm not mistaken, and I don't
Mhm.
remember who I saw it with from my first viewing, but I think I heard it from you, and that's when I went to see it. But it was a box office success.
Mhm.
Mad Max Fury Road had a budget of 154.6 million, anywhere between that and 185.1 million. It ended up making 380.4 million that summer.
Mhm.
It had an impact that summer.
Oh yeah.
It um it had another impact
Oh
the
yes.
following year at around award season, um, garnering 10 Oscar nominations, which came out of nowhere
I
because
did.
people did not expect this
Yeah.
movie. I
Yeah.
mean, as a genre film, we're thinking, "Oh, this is beautiful," and we think of this
Yes.
all the time about genre films, but they're like, it wasn't even our minds that the Academy would
Yeah.
recognize this
I didn't.
movie,
Nope.
but thankfully they did, and, I'm sure it boosted home video sales and such, and
Oh yeah.
it gained new life on home video and word of mouth after it made this impact at the Oscars. Um, The Revenant led that year with 12,
Mhm.
so it didn't lead, but it won the most Oscars that
Yeah.
night at the Academy Awards. It won 6,
I was
of
very, very happy about that.
yeah, so, um, it won Best Costume Design,
Mhm.
Best Film Editing, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Production Design, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. So a ton of technical and
Mhm.
visual um, awards here. The nominations that they didn't win were Best Visual Effects. That's the one typically where a genre film will get nominated. A
Oh
fan.
yeah.
The ones that the fans really show up for, the blockbusters. Ex Machina won that actually. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like a blockbuster, it was like
Mm-mm.
a smaller movie there. So that was pretty cool. I thought it was gonna win visual effects out of all of them, to be
Oh
honest
yeah,
with you.
100%. With the way they blended practical effects with visual effects, it was outstanding.
Right.
So yeah, I thought that had his biggest shot.
Right. But at least they got the production design, and as we
Yeah.
learned, that's just what you see in the movie,
Mhm.
so they awarded them for that. They did not win for best cinematography. The Revenant won that. And they did not win for Best Director. Inarritu won for The Revenant. So, but George Miller was nominated, which is
I
great
was
here.
very, very glad because George Miller was not some 20-something-year-old director. You know what I mean? This guy has been around for a very long time, and to direct a movie on this scope, this big, out there in the desert with this much practical effects, like I was so happy he was nominated. If he would have won, I would have totally been like, yeah, I totally get it. I get
Yeah,
why The Revenant won because The Revenant was a movie that was a technical marvel in a sense. They used only natural lighting. They actually filmed out in the wilderness. So I can see why The Revenant won those awards as well. But I'm very, very, very happy that a lot of the technical awards went to Mad Max because they should be praised because that movie is gorgeous and sounds amazing.
Yeah, and finally here, it was also nominated for Best Picture,
Yeah.
and it didn't win. Spotlight won, but
Mhm.
as the night went along, we were on social media, and we might have
Mhm.
even been talking to one another. It's just like, okay, so how many Oscars is that so far? Is the Academy going to give them Best Picture?
Yeah, I
Like,
was like, "Wait a minute," like, and that's a testament to how good the movie was, because like, you brought up a good point, how when the movie was when I walked out of that movie, I was blown away. I told everyone, go see this,"
yes,
but never in the back of my mind that I
no.
thought the Academy was gonna acknowledge what I just saw. So, when we're getting close to the Best Picture, I was like, "Are they gonna do it?" Like, and I wouldn't have been mad. I wouldn't have been mad. I absolutely adore that movie.
Yeah. So let's give a little love to the cast here. Of course, we have Tom
Mhm.
Hardy as Mad Max Rokotansky, Charlize Theron as Imperator Furiosa, Nicholas Holt as Nux, Hugh Keys Byrne as Imortan Joe. Rest in peace.
Mhm.
Um, let's see some other notable names. Nathan Jones as Rictus Erectus, Joe's
Yeah.
large muscular son. Um, we have Rosie Huntington Whiteley as the splendid Angharad. She's
Mhm.
Joe's most treasured breeder, so to speak. That's what it says here in the Wikipedia um, description here. We have a young Zoe Kravitz as
Yeah.
Toast the Knowing. So shout out to Zoe Kravitz there. Riley Keough as Capable, Abby Lee as the Dag, Courtney Eaton as Cheeto the Fragile. Um, I'm going to stop there. Um, obviously, I mentioned Megan Gale as the Valkyrie. Um, we have the Doof Warrior is listed as Iota. That's the name
Mhm.
that he goes by there. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the standouts here in the movie. You already touched on it. I'm just gonna say it. I mean, this is Charlize's movie,
Yep,
and
100%.
no
100%.
no dig on Tom Hardy. He did a great
No.
job as the quote unquote lead character, but a lot of people believe Furiosa is the co-lead, if not the lead of this movie.
Yeah, dude, it's her story, and
Yeah,
Charlize Theron crushes it. She's always been great, let's be real, but she absolutely is the powerhouse in this movie. Again, Max is a man of little words, he's a man of little words. He said he only speaks when he has to. Charlize is carrying this movie, man. Like, there are moments with her that I'm just, like, in it. Like, she was raw, and she absolutely deserved, to carry the movie as well as she did. She was great.
yeah. So on that note, let's give some closing thoughts here. Um, This is the fourth movie. We
Mhm.
had Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And Miller had this career where he's doing several different genres. He did
Oh my god.
Babe Pig in the City,
Yep.
Happy Feet, excuse me. And then they ask him to do Justice League Mortal.
Yeah.
And this was 2007, 2008. So Warner Brothers, while the Dark Knight trilogy is still in production, says we're going to do something different. We're going to start, they were essentially going to start a universe up. That's what the
Mhm.
rumor was, but they were going to start with the Justice League movie and then branch out. And this was, I'm assuming, in response to the MCU, because Iron Man had been announced and didn't get released until 2008. So it was around the same time,
Mhm.
So um, the stories about Justice League Mortal, they're going to continue for years and years. We're hoping
Oh,
for a
yeah.
documentary, but it's still continued to be talked about to this day because I believe it was going to be something special for what
Oh,
they were
yeah.
trying to do, and unfortunately, it didn't get made because of the writer strike.
Yeah.
So he does Happy Feet 2 in 2011. He's like, all right, well, I'll do another Happy Feet movie, and then his very next movie was Mad Max Fury Road in 2015. I believe Justice League Mortal was going to get released in '09.
Okay.
So, but this ended up being his next big live action movie, and once again, it's not like people were asking for another Mad Max movie. You
No.
know, Beyond Thunderdome came out in 1985. Obviously, he knocks it out of the park with Fury Road.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone is saying, like, okay, what's next? Are we going to do another Mad Max movie one day?
Mhm.
What's going to happen? And 9 years later, this other one comes out, and it was announced I'm not doing a sequel. I'm doing a prequel.
Prequel.
And because I'm assuming because everyone latched on to Charlize as Furiosa, let's do a Furiosa movie. But they're doing it as a prequel where a younger Furiosa takes the role. And I love Anya Taylor-Joy. She's an incredible actor, and I'm happy for her that she's getting this opportunity. But you and I both know there's no reason they couldn't have gotten Charlize back again and done some de-aging if they needed to, you know, for her,
I was,
you know.
before they made the casting announcement. When we're talking about years ago, when they were like, hey, they want to do another Mad Max movie, but it's going to be a prequel. I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. With Matt, and they're like, no, with Furiosa. And I was like, awesome. I can't wait to see Charlize Theron again. That's where my brain went. I was just like, we're going to see Charlize Theron again. And they were like, oh, they're going to recast her. They want to go with someone younger. And I was like, and I remember being like, oh, man, because
Right.
Charlize crushed it. And not to say no one else can do a great performance, but she crushed it. I fell in love with Charlize in the role. And Charlize, like, she looks phenomenal. Like, de-aging someone like Charlize is not difficult. Like
Right.
we've seen some de-aging where it's like, ooh, that's a little rough. You know what I mean? Like, because they're working against more, if you will. But Charlize, I was like, that'd be pretty easy to do. But I think that George just didn't want to play with it. He didn't want to do the de-aging. Right. He didn't want any type of Weird Valley vibes. So he was just like, like I'll just recast. I'll recast, and that's the move they went with.
Right.
And I'm surprised that it took this long, honestly, to have any type of sequel, because Mad Max Fury Road was extremely well received. Again, numerous Oscar nominations. George Miller was on the tongue of everybody, being like, did you see what he just made? So I'm surprised it took 9 years to get this going. But now we're moving forward. Movie's coming out soon. I was like, all right, let's hit the ground run and see what happens.
Yeah. So either way, I mean, it stinks we don't get Charlize back, but hey, it's, to me, we're returning to this world, and it laid the groundwork in Fury Road. Let's see what happens, because it's like, to me, I'm not doubting George Miller, not after what he did with that, and then looking back at his resume, it's like, no, he's no slouch, but at this late in his career to do this, and early critical reception has come in for Furiosa Mad Max Saga as high praise. We can't wait to see it, and
I can't wait.
And it's also, it begs the question now, like, do we just keep making these movies? Is this?
Listen, I want another one with Max. I do. Like, I'm like, I want another story with Max. If we're getting a prequel to Furiosa, let's get another one with Max. I really, really want one. But yeah, if this one does really well, try to give us one more, George. Try to give us one more. I know you got it in you, especially with the critical reception on this one being really good as well. I'm like, all right, George, let's get another one, man.
Yeah, and for me, I hate to say the universe word again here, but I mean, we might end up having one, because there's rumors that they're looking at another prequel set 1 year before Fury Road, and it's like, okay, I mean, obviously you and I will be there, but why not?
I want to move forward.
Yeah, why not? Let's see what happens next. Let's see what happens next. But I mean, well, here's the thing. I could see them doing another sequel, and then maybe Furiosa makes a small appearance, and then
I'm down with that.
And then we have a Furiosa trilogy.
Yeah,
maybe,
I'm down.
Maybe that's what they were looking at, because, I mean, I don't know if we can move forward with the Furiosa story again in the sequel. Oh, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many possibilities with this world that George Miller built, but we're here for it. We're excited to see what happens in the Mad Max saga, and can't wait to see what happens next, right?
Yeah, I can't wait, man. Like, I'm so eager and excited to see the next one. And again, if I walk out of that theater blown away like I was with Fury Road, I'm like, please, let's not wait 9 years to do this again. Let's just not do it. It's too good to pass up.
Yeah. All right, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for Mad Max Fury Road. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe at the Panel Bros on YouTube, we'd appreciate it. Also, if you could please let us know your thoughts about Mad Max Fury Road down in the comments below. We'd appreciate that as well. Just to let you know, those likes, shares, and subscribes, they help us out with our reach. The bigger our reach, the more people can listen to us or tune into us here. So thank you for that. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.